I want to take you back a second to 1981, more than 40 years ago, and take you back to this game right here between the Atlanta Falcons and the Green Bay Packers. You can learn more about this game by clicking the card in the upper right corner. This game was notable for producing one of the craziest comebacks in NFL history, the likes of which I thought we would never see again. Entering the fourth quarter, the Falcons trail the Packers 17-0. And then, seemingly out of nowhere, the Falcons proceeded to score 31 points and win the game 31-17. It was the NFL record for most points scored by one team in the fourth quarter of a game where they were shut out in the first three quarters. However, in the fourth quarter of that game, the Falcons just played lights out. Yes, there were some coaching errors and there were some mental lapses on the part of the Packer players, but there wasn't anything that I'd say was egregious from a play calling perspective. The Packers were never in a position to just run out the clock. The Falcons made it a two-score game right as the fourth quarter started. And then, thanks to a great punt return following a 3-and-out, made it a one-score game with plenty of time left in the fourth. In other words, the Packers were never in a position to ice the game. They never had it outright won. To put it bluntly, they didn't do this on 3rd and 5 when the other team had just one timeout left and there were under 5 minutes to go in the contest.
Line of scrimmage. It's a 3rd and 5. They come up the middle. Heavy pressure in the throw. Intercepted. It's picked off by Sternad. He breaks the tackle.
Yeah, welcome to Dumb Decisions. Before we break down what happened here, this whole series is about taking an in-depth look at decisions made during games that were clearly awful from the start. This isn't something to look bad in hindsight. Rather, this is something to look awful almost immediately. These are moves where your gut instinct tells you right away that there is no way this can possibly work. And sure enough, your gut instinct was smarter than that of an NFL head coach. And for this one, we're taking a look at the mind of New York Giants head coach Brian Daboll. This was the game that we'll look back on as the moment he got fired and dug his own grave. This was the game that there's truly no coming back from. There are a lot of games that will be played this season that will be forgotten about through the passage of time, except for the people who study the game or for the people who were at the game. And then there are some games that you know will live on in NFL history forever, will get a moniker, and will never be forgotten about. And folks, the Mile High Meltdown is one of those games. When a team comes back and scores 33 points in the fourth quarter after scoring none the first three quarters, and a team pulls off something improbable like this, it lives on in history. This is up there with one of the worst regular season losses in Giants history. Heck, it might be the #1 worst regular season loss that didn't involve a miracle at the Meadowlands at the hands of the Philadelphia Eagles. And while there were many reasons for the loss, from atrocious kicking to atrocious defense at the end to a whole bunch of other things, it boils down to this play. It boils down to this insane decision by Brian Daboll, because without it, let's be very clear, the Giants win the game. This game falls squarely on Daboll's shoulders, and this decision was so bad, and this collapse was so historic, that we might be past the point of no return when it comes to the Brian Daboll era of Giants football. So with that being said, let's take a look at why throwing a pass on 3rd and 5 with under 5 minutes left in your own territory, up by 10 points, is a really bad idea. I don't want to say that at this point you've got the game won, but barring something stupid, you've pretty much got the game won. The Broncos only have one timeout left, and the clock is 100% on your side. First off, 3rd and 5 is a down where, if you play your cards right, you can run the ball and successfully pick it up and move the chains. Obviously, I wouldn't advise most teams to get 5 yards by running it, but it's not completely out of the picture. If you get the first down, great, but if not, you're still in a good spot. A first down, while nice, is not the objective here. You have to recognize at this point that the only way you can lose this game is if you shoot yourself in the foot. If you run the ball and get the first down, the Broncos burn their final timeout, and the game is basically over. Up by 2 scores, just keep running it. And the Broncos need an absolute miracle to get anything going, since they'll be getting it back with roughly 2:30 left, down by 10, with no timeouts. However, If you run the ball and don't pick up the first down, guess what? You're still good. The Broncos burn their final timeout, and you're punting it away with about 4:50 to go. You were averaging about 44 yards per punt. So let's say the run gets 2 yards and you punt it at your average. This means that the Broncos are likely going to be starting their ensuing drive inside their own 20-yard line. Now, let me ask you this, Coach Daboll. You've got a 10-point lead, and the other team has no timeouts, and they have to start their ensuing drive inside their own 20-yard line. Unless you allow something crazy and allow the Broncos to score on the first play, which you probably won't because you'll be playing a more relaxed defense that allows the Broncos to use the middle of the field where the clock runs, but prevents anything long and over the top. The only way, literally, the only way the Broncos win this game is if they score a touchdown or a field goal, recover an onside kick, which has been successfully converted a grand total of 1 out of 21 times this season, so under 5%, and then drive down the field and do it again. Unless your defense just falls asleep or some miracle occurs, you're going to win the game. Heck, even if the Broncos somehow drive down the field in 2 minutes, which is still insanely quick, but still, even if they drive down in 2 minutes, if you get the ball back and you go 3 and out, the Broncos are only going to have about 30 seconds to do anything. The point is that by running the ball, even if you don't get the first and give it back to the Broncos, it would take a lot for them to come back. You force the Broncos to burn a timeout. You force the Broncos to start inside their own 20-yard line. You make it require the fact that everything needs to go perfect for the Broncos to erase this deficit. But by throwing the ball, yeah, you just gave the game right back to Denver for no reason. Texas head coach Daboll Royal said back in the day, there are 3 things that can happen when you pass the football, and 2 of them are bad. Obviously, times are different now, and the passing game is a lot better, and quarterbacks are a lot better than what they were back in the 1960s. But here, this phrase absolutely applies. If you throw an incompletion and stop the clock, the Broncos get it back with just under 5 minutes to go and a timeout. If the Broncos go down the field and score in 2 minutes, like I said earlier, and they have a timeout, they don't need to try an onside kick. If they force a 3 and out and get a stop, they're getting it back a second time with more than enough time to march down the field, and they'll have over a minute. It's a whole different set of circumstances. If you throw an interception, the Broncos still have a short field, they're starting in scoring range, they will cut it to a 1-score game without taking that much time off the clock, and they keep their timeout to be able to use defensively when needed. Throwing the ball was the only way that the Broncos would get back into the game. And sure enough, what do? You throw the freaking football. Instead of the Broncos having no timeouts, needing to go 80 yards down the field, needing to recover an onside kick if they score on the minus side of the 2-minute warning, or get a 3 and out if they score on the plus side of it, and then needing to score a second time, you gave the Broncos new life and made their jobs a heck of a lot easier. And this isn't me saying that you should always run the ball if it forces the other team to burn their final timeout. This is a case-by-case basis. Look, if the Broncos had all 3 of their timeouts, I'm fine throwing the ball here. In fact, that's exactly what I would have done. But you have to look at the timeout situation. But like I said, case-by-case basis. If there's 1:40 left in a football game, and you're up by 2 points, and it's 3rd and 12, and the other team has 1 timeout left, I actually think it'd be quite dumb to run the ball. If you run it there, you're not getting the first, and the other team, even without a timeout, doesn't need all that time to get into field goal range. But in this spot, in this particular spot, when there's under 5 minutes to go, and you're up by 2 scores, as a general rule of thumb, you always run the ball. Even if the other team knows what's coming, and even if the other team is more likely than not to stop you, that does not matter. You make the clock their enemy at that point. You take 40 more seconds off. You do not give them a short field or a chance at getting a short field, and you go from there. If the Giants run the ball here, they win the game. Plain and simple, they win the game. Whether or not they get the first down is irrelevant. They win the game. Instead, they didn't do either of those things. They didn't run the ball, and they didn't win the game. And you're not going to believe what the man you've been watching this entire time, Brian Daboll, had to say about this. Really, you're not going to believe it. Because after the game, when someone asked him the thought process behind throwing it in that spot, this is what he had to say.
Hey, one specific one you mentioned, slightly last night. Letting Jackson throw the ball 3rd and 5, right? They had used 2 of their timeouts. You could run it and make them use the 3rd timeout. You obviously put trust in your rookie quarterback. He threw an interception. What is all the things that you're thinking about there, the ramifications, the pluses and minuses?
Have confidence in Jackson to go out like we did. Similar, I'm not saying it's the exact same thing, but the Chargers game when he hit Theo there. Thought we had a good play called. I had some pressure, kind of got tripped up, but I have a lot of confidence in him, and that's why we called it.
You referenced a throw that Dart made and a play that he made 1 month before in Week 4 against the Los Angeles Chargers. Play that clip for me. Just play that clip.
Thomas the block. There's the first down throw, and it's caught by Johnson.
You realize how dumb you sound, right? You realize how woefully unqualified you sound when you cite that play and that situation as the reason you threw it there, right? I know you started off by saying that it's not exactly the same thing, but you said it was pretty similar. That's like saying that I bought apples at the grocery store instead of milk, and yeah, it's not the same thing, but it's pretty similar. Those situations could not be more different. The circumstances behind that throw and the one you called against the Broncos could not be more dissimilar. In that game against the Chargers, there were more than 2.5 minutes left, and you were up by 3. If you didn't get a first down, the Chargers get it back, needing to get about 40 yards in 2.5 minutes to tie the game. They only needed 1 score. That's a situation where you absolutely throw the ball, because the first down is way more important than the clock and forcing the other team to burn their final timeout, because the Chargers don't need that much time to drive down the field. I think Daboll genuinely thought, we've got the lead against a team facing 3rd and 5 around our own 30-yard line. They only have 1 timeout left, and this worked last time, so let's try it again. When that is a complete lack of understanding of the situation at hand. If you're up by 3 and throw this pass and it doesn't work, it's a bad play by Dart, but I'm not going to get on you as a head coach for calling it. Up by 10? Absolutely not. If you hold on to the ball and keep 2 hands on it and don't fumble, the worst case scenario for you is that the Broncos have to drive 80 yards, get a stop or recover an onside kick, then drive another 30 yards to win the game, all without having a single timeout, and all while time is ticking down. If you throw the ball and it falls incomplete, the Broncos have a timeout and 40 extra seconds to play with, meaning that they don't have to recover an onside kick in all likelihood. If you throw the ball and it's an interception, the Broncos have a short field, and it's a brand new ball game. So why you threw here befuddles me and confuses me to no end. But this will be the exact moment that we look back on when we look at the end of the road and the final nail in the coffin for Brian Daboll. From Coach of the Year to this, how the mighty have fallen. So what do we learn from all of this? If you can basically wrap up the game by running the ball, then run the ball. There's being aggressive, and then there's being reckless and stupid. And this was being reckless and stupid. If you're up by 2 scores with under 5 minutes left, and you can force the other team to burn their final timeout, all while having a semi-realistic chance at getting a first down by running the ball, and while forcing the other team to drive the length of the field to score twice if you don't get the first, then run the ball. There is no reason not to run the ball. And just because 2 things may seem similar doesn't mean that they are. 3rd and 5 up by 3 late in the game is very different than 3rd and 5 up by 10 late in the game. And if you can't recognize that, then maybe you're not the right man to lead a football team. Because when all these elements are in play, you can't exactly be surprised when this play backfires. Talk about a dumb decision. Check out our live streaming schedule for the next few days. We're live every single day on this channel, whether we're covering a sporting event or playing GeoGuessr or just taking your requests. So make sure you like and subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss a single time that we go live and so that you can join this community. Also, thanks to all our members and our Patreon supporters who get exclusive perks like their name at the end of each video, members-only Q&A streams, and cool emojis to use on videos and during streams. See how you can join this community and become a member or a Patreon member by clicking the link in the description below.